Hi, I'm futurist Jim Carroll, and for close to 30 years, I've been providing my guidance to organizations worldwide on the trends that will impact them, the disruptive change that is occurring, and the innovation strategies they need to pursue to align to a new reality. So much of this has involved the digitization of every single industry as the speed of change comes to be defined by technology. What I'm going to cover with you today are the trends that you can expect in the near term that will continue to shape your business and your organization, the impact of COVID-19 on the acceleration of those trends, and what we need to do to ensure that we are building and maintaining a reliable digital infrastructure to take us into the future. To start out, I want to share with you three statistics, three observations which put into perspective the reality of the pace of change impacting our world today. The very first comes from a study that was done in Australia of the education system and the future of careers. They determined that 65% of kids who were in preschool today will work in jobs or careers that do not yet exist. That's an example of the stunning rate of change in which we find ourselves today. The second observation comes from the world of education as well. It said if you're taking any type of degree today based on science, so agriculture, architecture, engineering, anything having to do with healthcare or medical sciences, and indeed anything having to do with information technology, it's estimated that half of the knowledge that we get in our very first year of a college or university program, half of that knowledge is obsolete or revised by the time we graduate 3 to 4 years later. The third observation comes from the automotive sector. It said the typical car arriving on a dealer lot today is already obsolete. It's already out of date. Many of the legacy auto companies are shipping vehicles with chips that were designed in 2004. They can barely keep up with the pace of technological change that is sweeping their industry as cars essentially become computers. That's why my key message for a lot of my global clients has been, we live in a world in which the future belongs to those who are fast. But indeed, there's a lot of organizations that are running a slow race. We need to pick up the pace. We need to align ourselves to a new and faster reality. And that's where I spend my time with massive global organizations, organizations like Disney, the PGA of America, Pfizer, NASA, talking about the disruptive trends which are going to change and challenge their future and yet provide opportunity. The reality is those organizations and every organization is struggling to realize, what do we do in a world in which we need to think big, start small, and scale fast? And certainly you're seeing a lot of this in news media. I've participated in my share of interviews trying to wake people up to the dramatic transformations that are underway. So much of this involves a digital transformation, a world in which technology is coming to define the disruptive trends, the speed of change, and the challenges and opportunities that are presented. What we need to do is we need to think about what we need to do once those trends became faster as a result of the pandemic. What happens when we get an acceleration gap, which really challenges us in terms of our ability to cope with the future. What I'm going to cover for you today is to put in perspective the trends which are shaping your future, the impact that COVID-19 and the global pandemic has had upon our reality and the impact that has had on the speed of change, the impact of what I call the acceleration gap. And then I want to challenge you to think about what you are doing to ensure that you are putting in place a robust, reliable, scalable digital transformation architecture that can support your organization as it goes forward into the future. But really, to start out, I've got to get to a place where I'm a little bit more comfortable in talking to you. Give me just one moment. There we go. That's a little bit better. I'm on my virtual stage where I've been providing this guidance to organizations around the world. Look, my previous life had me out on stages in Las Vegas and around the world, speaking to organizations about the future, about trends, about disruptive thinking. And then COVID-19 hit. And what I determined I was going to do was I was going to build myself a virtual broadcast studio in my basement in a room that is 10 by 12 with a whole bunch of gear, a whole bunch of lights, a whole bunch of technology, a whole bunch of software where I could continue to share my insight. And this is where I'm coming to you from today in this massive green screen studio. So what does a futurist do? Well, I provide insight on disruptive trends. Now, some people, when they think about a futurist, they think about someone who is talking about crazy 23rd science fiction trends, a world that is simply unimaginable. I do a little bit of that, but that's not what I really do. What I do is I talk to global clients about what I call the drivers of disruption, the major trends, which are challenging and changing and providing opportunity in virtually every single industry and speeding up the rate of change. So much of this involves the digitization of industry. So much of this involves the arrival of technology as the defining disruptor of our times. And what I describe to a lot of organizations is essentially what we are doing is we're building a big, complicated machine. And to ensure that we can survive and thrive in this complicated world, we've got to ensure that we are going to do it right. I talk a lot about near-term trends. One of the most popular pages of my website is called 20 Trends into 2030. Are you ready for the massive transformation of just about everything? And what I do with folks is I challenge them to think about what our world might look like just 10 years from now if we were to look back at today and imagine just how different things are going to be. I'm going to share with you a video clip from a keynote that I gave in New Orleans just before the global pandemic hit, which really puts into perspective the reality of what is occurring. This is about 2 minutes long, but I want you to watch it because this captures the essence of the rate of change enveloping our world today. Once we looked back in time from the future, we came to realize that the future turned out to be way bigger than we ever expected it would. You know, at one moment in time, we will look back at the agricultural industry and say to ourselves, at one moment in time, we used to farm when the sun was up, using manual labor and farmers and tractors. And then one day we woke up and we were doing 24-hour farming with a lot of robotic technology, farming 24 hours a day, driven and managed by a fleet of operators inside buildings. One day we will wake up and we will look back in time and remember the day when we used to actually go to stores to get the things we need. And then we woke up and one day we realized we were in a world in which the products came to us. One day we will look back and realize that we fixed people after they became sick. But because of advances in genomic DNA-based medicine, we had increasing knowledge of what it is that they were likely to become sick with, and we could architect the delivery of healthcare solutions based upon that knowledge. One day we realized we had people called truck drivers who actually drove physical trucks. And then all of a sudden we found ourselves in a world with autonomous vehicle technology, trucks with no doors, no windows, no human inside, which were being driven by people thousands of miles away. One day we'll look back at the world of manufacturing and realize that we were in a world of manufacturing in which we would produce millions of products that were all the same. But then with 3D printing and end of runway manufacturing, we found ourselves in a world in which we were doing mass customization, in which we were not designing products that were all the same for millions of people, but we were designing products which were uniquely customized for every single customer and were 3D printed on an end-of-runway manufacturing site close to their home. And the entire concept of inventory forever disappeared. There are massive transformative trends that are underway today, which are forever shaping the world of every single industry. We are living through an absolutely seismic time. A massive change is occurring. And if you wake up 10 years from now and look back at your industry today, you will barely recognize things. The key thing is, are you doing what is necessary to prepare yourself for this era of massive disruption? Are you aligned to how the world has shifted in terms of speed as a result of the global pandemic? And are you doing everything you need to do in terms of challenging yourself in terms of a reliable, robust, scalable, and secure digital infrastructure? Let's start the voyage by talking about the reality of those drivers of disruption. There, I'm back in my comfort zone, my happy place where I can share my insight. Let's talk about the drivers of disruption. Let's talk about the massive trends which are challenging and changing every single industry and taking us into the next decade. Here's what's happening. We're seeing so many trends come together all at once, which is turning on the imagination machine of people worldwide. Think about what we are seeing, the arrival of sophisticated virtual reality, augmented reality technologies, the acceleration of artificial intelligence, what is happening with the Internet of Things and the industrial Internet of Things, the maturity of 3D printing, going from a science fiction-like concept to something which is very real and having a dramatic impact, the acceleration of robotic and cobotic technology, providing unseen and unplanned and massive opportunities, the sudden arrival of cryptocurrency, Web 3.0, non-fungible tokens, all these ideas which are accelerating opportunity. What is happening here is an explosion of new technologies, new platforms, new concepts, which are turning on the imagination machine of people worldwide. And this is what is at the root of so much of the disruption occurring out there. What happens as this unfolds is that essentially every single company, every single industry, every single organization is becoming a software company where software technology is defining the future. Think about what is happening with cars. Cars aren't cars anymore. Cars are becoming rolling upgradable software platforms on wheels. Think about what Tesla is doing in terms of redefining the automotive industry. It's not a car, it's a computer with a battery on wheels. In the healthcare sector, we are seeing the arrival of a lot of intelligent, connected medical device technology. And what is happening here is it's providing new pathways for patients to get involved with their health. It is accelerating the opportunity for the healthcare industry to get more involved with those patients. What is happening clearly is as medical devices come to the forefront, software defines the future of that industry. It's happening in the world of farming. We're in the world of farming going from a world in which we can only farm when the sun is up to a world of 24-hour farming, accelerated by autonomous vehicle technology, accelerated by robotics, accelerated by a lot of new science and technology devices. Software has determined the future of the agricultural industry. And what is behind a lot of this is what we call hyperconnectivity, the Internet of Things, the industrial Internet of Things. This is what's happening to vehicles. I mean, vehicles are becoming an upgradable, hyper-connected data gathering platform with wheels. It's not a car anymore. It's a new and different type of thing. And that is the defining trend occurring in every single industry. It bleeds into insurance, where if we have real-time data on driving behavior, we're no longer insuring driving behavior based upon looking back. We're insuring driving behavior based on real-time examination of your performance. What happens here is the entire global insurance industry, whether it's property and casualty or health insurance, now becomes a software-driven industry. In the world of healthcare, I was with one organization talking about medical device connectivity and their sales team and explaining it's not a widget anymore. We're not selling a widget anymore. We're selling some sort of weird, hyper-connected, intelligent, artificially intelligent thing. What happens here is every single industry changes. And what happens when an industry becomes a software industry? Well, Moore's law defines the speed of change. And Moore's law is the law that the processing power of a computer chip doubles every 18 months or less and the cost cuts in half. And that speed of change is now coming to every single industry. That speed of change is coming to define the acceleration of disruption in every single industry. And a lot of legacy industries, from banking to automotive to healthcare to retail, weren't fully prepared for this speed of change. And that's why my tagline and what my global clients have been seeking from me is what do we do to align the reality of a world in which the future belongs to those who are fast. Part of the challenge here that occurs is products become obsolete faster. Think about how quickly you replace your iPhone, you're replacing your Android device, you're replacing them every 18 months or 24 months or less, because we are witnessing a massive acceleration of the technology that has evolved. And that same pace of instant obsolescence is coming to automotive, it's coming to medical devices, it's coming to retail, it's coming to insurance, it's coming to define the disruptive trends that surround us. Behind a lot of all this is that science itself is accelerating and exponentiating. I find one of the most fascinating things in our world today is the fact that we have Fitbits for cows. We have Fitbits for cows. These are little animal collar devices, and the data is read by a drone flying overhead. And I was talking to one rancher, and he said, he gets a lot better sleep at night because it used to be during calving season, he'd have to be out in the field in the cold and the wind and the muck and the rain to assist in giving delivery. He now gets a text message on his phone telling him the exact location he needs to be for an animal that is beginning to calve. What is behind a lot of the data collected in this industry, where this industry becomes a software industry, is drone technology. The challenge with drones have batteries. Batteries are heavy. Batteries delay the amount of time that a drone can be in the air. And what is happening from a science perspective is a massive acceleration of the battery science in the drone, which bleeds into the automotive industry, which comes into the energy industry, which comes into renewables. If you think about the exponentiation of science, the cost of battery technology has declined by 97% within the last 3 decades. And that's why I wrote this one blog post, a play on the movie The Graduate from the 1960s. Remember the scene where the fellow is talking to the young Dustin Hoffman? He say, I've got one word for you about the future. Plastics. I have a one word for everybody about the future. Batteries. Batteries are coming to define so many industries. And this is an example of how science is exponentiating. That's but one industry. What is occurring as all these trends come together is ideas are accelerating. What is happening is this big global idea machine is coming together, where people are discovering new ideas, new concepts, new methods of sharing, new discoveries, new inventions, new opportunities. Here's a staggering statistic to get you thinking about what is happening in terms of the acceleration of chemical science, which is coming about as a result of the global connectivity we put in place. It's estimated today there are about 19 million known chemical substances. That number is now doubling every 12 years or less. So it is estimated by the year 2030, there will be 50 million known chemical substances. But if you do the exponential math on this, it is estimated that by the year 2100, we will have 5 billion known chemical substances. We're going from 19 million to 5 billion. Well, what's the relevance of this? Here's an example of what occurs with the acceleration of ideas. It was the discovery of one single new chemical substance which permitted Apple to miniaturize the hard drive for the very first iPod. The emergence of one single new chemical substance led to the emergence of a multi-billion-dollar industry. And that's but one substance out of 5 billion. I mean, we're living in extraordinary times. What is coming with all of this is knowledge itself is absolutely exploding. Every single career, every single profession, every single industry, every single company can barely keep up with the rate of change that is occurring. A lot of this has become about because of global collaboration, global connectivity, the manner by which we can share these ideas. And here's an example. It is said before COVID, the volume of medical knowledge was doubling every 8 years. It is now doubling every 78 days. The arrival of new methodologies, new forms of diagnosis, new forms of treatment, new forms of pharmaceutical discovery, new medical device connectivity. What is occurring in the world of healthcare is but an example of what is occurring in every single industry. These are the trends driving disruptive change. What happens in this world is organizations can't do everything that needs to be done to align to a faster world. So partnership increasingly comes to dominate business models. Certainly we saw a lot of this in the retail sector, where organizations have had to rely on third-party logistics company, last-mile delivery organizations, organizations which could help them put in place a robust, reliable, scalable e-commerce site. So much of what the retail sector has had to do is they've had to rely on partners to help them to get to where they need to be going. In the context of all this, with this disruptive change, as organizations are discovering they have to reinvent their revenue on a regular basis. Here's a fascinating statistic to think about. Apple is in a situation where 60% of its revenue comes from products that didn't exist 4 years ago. That's a blistering pace of innovation. Could you be in the same rate of innovation? Increasingly, you will find yourself in this reality as these disruptive trends come to take hold. All of this is happening in the context in which attention spans are absolutely collapsing. We have no attention spans left. You're already struggling in the virtual world because you've got all these distractions around you. It is said the typical goldfish today has a longer attention span than a human. It is said when we go into a retail store, that we're scanning some 12 feet of shelf space per second. And organizations are having to learn to interact and engage and get involved with their customers in new and different ways as their attention is distracted in so many different ways. You add on to this the reality of what is occurring is a lot of connectivity is bringing out distributed technologies, distributed business models. I think one of the most exciting trends unfolding in the future is what we might call microgrid technology, where you'll have a little bit of solar in your roof, I'll have a little bit of wind, we'll have intelligent distributed technologies to create our own little energy microgrid to share that energy, challenging and disrupting the global utility energy industry. Add on to this the fact that virtualization itself is maturing. I look at kids today playing Farmville. They're not just playing Farmville. They are getting into a mindset in which they will run virtually that 24-hour farm of the not too distant future where we don't have to just farm when the sun is up. This is what is leading to business model disruption and business models being redefined and realigned in so many different ways. And what is behind so much of this is the acceleration of all digital transformation. Technology is at the heart of everything we do, every business model we have, every product we bring to market, every manner in which we operate, and every method by which we deal with the challenge, change, opportunity, and threat of the future. And that's why we need big, bold thinking to ensure that we can survive and thrive going forward into the future. I get up every morning and I put some sort of motivational or future-oriented or disruptive thinking quote out to social media. And one morning I got up and this is the thought that came to my mind. Companies that do not yet exist will build products not yet conceived, based on ideas that have not yet been generated, using materials not yet invented, with manufacturing methodologies not yet in existence. Are you ready for the reality of disruption? And are you ready for the reality of how COVID-19 and the global pandemic has made this reality even starker, even more real, and has sped up our future to an unprecedented degree? Let's consider how COVID changed everything. So how has the future changed with the pandemic? Well, we all remember those first few weeks in March and April 2020, and regardless of who we are and what we were doing, if you look back at it now, you're kind of stunned by just how quickly things unfolded. From a personal perspective, it happened with me when I was approached by the news media about 3 weeks into the pandemic, 4 weeks in, to talk on a show about what I was doing to align to the reality of a world in which I wasn't going out on stages anymore, but I was hanging out in my basement. But when they ran this show, they also included a farmer who reinvented his business. Now, his business model had him participating in farmers markets, taking his products from east of Toronto, Canada, which is close by where I live, to farmers markets. He could no longer do that. And I followed up with him, and he had put together a remarkable video which outlined his strategy, his thinking. And I want to share this video with you, just about 45 seconds of it, because to me, this is a remarkable story of what it was really all about.
It's not an online store. It's building an entirely new distribution path for local food. I've said since day one, growing food, it's a challenge, but it's relatively easy, right? Getting that food to somebody has been the bigger challenge. There was the old food system that existed 2 weeks ago. There's a new food system that's being figured out right now, and I don't think we'll be going back. I hope we're not going back.
When you watch a video like that and you think about the impact of the pandemic and you think about how quickly people had to change, the word seismic does come to mind, because we have lived through an extraordinary period of time, and this has forever changed and shaped and challenged the world of business and organizations in how they respond to the future. I think what we saw was 10 years of change compressed into just a few months as organizations had to deal with sudden new realities. And this It's caused a lot of lessons to be learned. It challenged and provided new insight on innovation and creativity, how to do things. And what this really did was it accelerated major trends. I mean, I used to go into the retail sector and talk about the fact that we would over time see the dominance of online shopping. I actually wrote a book in 1999 called Selling Online, How to Become a Successful E-commerce Merchant. Well, online is now so much the future of retail. It is staggering. So what has happened here is major trends accelerated. And I think through this, organizations have learned something new about speed. They've learned how to operate at speed. They've learned how to challenge themselves to operate and think faster. They have learned how to do things that are based on a foundation of agility and flexibility and responding rapidly to unforeseen circumstances. It's kind of fun to think that, before COVID hit, a lot of my keynotes were built around the concept of leadership agility, not software agile, not software agility, but leadership agility. How do we respond to faster change? And you think about it now, leadership teams have just learned how to be agile and flexible. Obviously, business models shifted faster in virtually every single industry, not just retail, but everywhere else, as a realization came that we could move quicker, that we could align to trends quicker, that we could innovate quicker, and we could change and challenge our business models faster. I think at the root of a lot of this is the attitude that something couldn't be done simply disappeared, because urgency became the mother of all innovation. We simply had to get things done in order to survive and get through this thing. And with that, decision-making paralysis disappeared. I mean, organizations, didn't study and issue reports and, have interminable committee meetings and things like that. It was just, we got to make a decision, we got to do it, and we got to do it now. And this is a staggering change, and I don't think we're going back to where we were. And with that, a lot of slow structure was put under a microscope. Organizations learned how to build and implement fast teams. Let's pull in this resource from over there, that resource from over there, and this individual from over there, and let's create a team that can simply get something done. These are seismic changes, and old barriers to new ideas absolutely disappeared. I talk a lot about what I call the innovation killers. These are the phrases that hold us back from pursuing the future. Think about the phrases that we used to see before the pandemic. You can't do that because we've always done it this way. It won't work. It's a dumb idea. The boss won't go for it. It's doomed to fail. These are the attitudes which can hold us back from pursuing the future. And a lot of those attitudes and excuses simply disappeared with the pandemic, because get it done became the rallying cry. And what I am now discovering with my global clients is it's now all about sustaining that momentum. How do we keep the lessons that we learned through the pandemic as we go into a future that is even faster? And why is it faster? It's faster because of what I call the acceleration gap. And that is the difference between the pace of change and the ability of organizations to keep up with that rate of change. And so much of that has to do with the fact that what is behind so many of these trends, as I've said, is digital transformation, where every single organization becomes a software-driven industry in which technology and the infrastructure in place controls and defines their future. Let's consider the reality of what is occurring with the acceleration gap. So what is the acceleration gap? Look, just about 10 years ago, one of my books came out, and it was called The Future Belongs to Those Who Are Fast. And it was all about these types of disruptive trends. And what I was trying to do is alert organizations to the fact that the future is all about speed, and we need to challenge ourselves on speed. And I would talk a lot about the fact that the pace of change was now outstripping the ability of organizations to deal with that reality of change. And so we're running a race, and we certainly couldn't be slow in this race, because that would have profound implications. Well, some months back, I wrote this blog post, Bridging the Acceleration Gap, Achieving Growth by Aligning to the Faster Paced Future. And here's what the gap is all about. If you think about the pace of change, it's been sort of motoring along at a relatively slow pace, and organizations have had to deal with that reality. But the pandemic sped everything up. Those previous 10 realities has led to a future in which the pace of change is even outstripping more the ability of organizations to deal with that rate of change, even as they've learned all these powerful lessons. And so it's critical that we bridge the gap. And I want you to be thinking about where are you seeing the gap in your industry? What fundamental things have changed? So I'll lead you through a list. But before we do that, let's consider what we saw with some organizations as they dealt with the gap, the world of retail, the world of logistics. Think about what FedEx and other organizations had to do with the sudden dominance of online retail and last mile logistics and online delivery and all of these things. I mean, they had to deal with staggering rates of change. The world of healthcare. It's kind of interesting that what we saw was the acceleration of 3D printing technology, which was part of the gap, because all of a sudden organizations were printing nasal swabs and surgical masks and other critically needed gear to deal with the reality of the challenges that were occurring. What this did was it sped up the acceptance of those new concepts, those new ideas in the world of manufacturing. We saw the acceleration of robotic and cobotic technology because this provided for a lot of safe manufacturing with social distancing on the factory floor. So these are examples of where the acceleration gap actually sped up as a result of the pandemic. So go through a list of how has your world changed? How has the acceleration gap made these disruptive trends even bigger, even faster? Where did your gap change? And I'll lead you through a series of examples of the things that you should be considering when it comes to your reality. Here's what I think occurred. A lot of basic assumptions about our businesses, our business models, our products, the life cycle of our products, the nature of the products we're bringing to market. It all changed. How did your world change as a result of the pandemic? What happened was, obviously, we saw this massive change in consumer behavior. We actually like online shopping. The ability to hit a button and have something delivered. We actually like telehealth, the ability to hit a button and have a conversation with our doctor. We actually like online religious services where we don't actually have to go out on a horrible wintry Sunday morning, but can go into a virtual church to participate. We saw massive changes in consumer behavior. How is this going to continue to challenge and change your strategy going forward? Part of this, I think, is that what happened here was customers in some ways are moving faster than you were. And so you had to respond to that faster consumer change. That became a real challenge. I've explained that I think what has occurred here is the danger of a mismatch in customer expectations. Everybody expects you to operate at the same level of professional quality as Amazon and other high-end, excellent quality online customer service organizations. Your e-commerce infrastructure, your pick and pack infrastructure, your delivery infrastructure, your status updates, everything you are doing has to be of the utmost sophistication because customers' expectations are so much higher today. What came about was business models are evolving and changing and challenging quicker. And if you're not doing it, you can be darn sure that your competitors are doing it, as well as new competitors emerging in your industry who didn't exist before. Your product innovation could be falling behind because in the context of the rapid business model change, everybody's innovating faster. Remember, we learned something new about creativity and aligning to this new and different future. That means we need to challenge ourselves in terms of our planning cycles. We've got to make sure that we're planning in faster chunks of time to deal with the reality of what is occurring. We can't let our planning cycle get out of sync in a world which is faster. The timing issue becomes more complex. For a lot of my clients, I've explained that the issue of the future and when these trends become real, timing is one of the most important issues. What we call the Gartner hype cycle, where every trend that appears, the trend becomes hyped. We hit the trough of disillusionment when the hype collapsed and we eventually hit the plateau of productivity. Well, that timing curve has sped up to a huge degree, so you need to challenge yourselves in terms of your ability to deal with the timing of trends. You put all this together, organizations that couldn't respond to the reality, the impact of weak leadership became far more visible as organizations started to fall behind. And with that, the impact of wrong decisions certainly became bigger than it was before. I mean, these are very significant trends. You need to go through this list to challenge yourself on your thinking. Quicker irrelevance of strategic planning. I mean, I grew up in an era in which we used to have 5-year plans. Who even plans on a 5-year basis anymore? You've got to plan for what you might be doing next month and be prepared to challenge that strategic plan 1 month later. These are all the issues of speed. And I think supply chain, we're all talking about supply chain issues. I think what happened here was this all laid bare the reality of sudden demand shifts because consumers and markets and industries and products and reliability and robustness of our supply chains were all of a sudden far more volatile, where volatility is the new normal. We have to prepare for that. These are all the issues that go with the acceleration gap. We're all challenged by the workforce skills gap, right? The great resignation. How do we get the right skills at the right time for the right purpose? This was all accelerated by the pandemic and became very real. What really occurred here? I think what the pandemic did was it laid bare the inability of slow-moving organizations to deal with a fast-paced future. Think about that, because that is absolutely critical. This is the essence of everything that is going on. The pandemic laid bare the inability of slow-moving organizations to deal with the reality of a fast-paced future. And that's what the acceleration gap is all about. And most important of all, and I keep emphasizing this because this is absolutely critical, it accelerated the inevitability of digital transformation. We thought the future was far away. The future is actually coming at us with greater speed, greater intensity. If the future belonged to those who were fast before the pandemic, the future belongs to those who are now even faster. But here's the thing. You've got to make sure, as you go forward into this faster future, that you are doing the right things with your digital transformation infrastructure. And personally, I don't think we're doing a really great job at it. Let's cover the reasons why. I think one of the most interesting things about our world today is we're building this big complicated machine, but I'm not quite sure that we're doing a really good job at it. And I think you need to challenge yourself on how well are you doing on your march to the future. Now, I follow a Twitter account, Internet of, and the word is a profanity. It's actually kind of a hilarious Twitter account to follow because what it's doing is it's covering a lot of the things that are happening out there as we go forward into, for example, the world of Internet of Things and connected intelligent devices. And I mean, you know and I know, we see all kinds of examples of the crazy things that are going wrong out there, the security flaws and challenges that are existing, the privacy issues, the simple mistakes that are being made. I think the challenges are this: the big complicated machine that we're building is not really secure to a large degree. It's not scalable. It's not well architected. It's not properly funded. It's not reliable, it has multiple points of failure, and this is no way to prepare ourselves for a future in which technology is going to define the essence of everything we do as an organization going forward in the future. Just consider some of the crazy things that have happened. I've just compiled a short little list. I mean, there's hundreds of these, there's thousands of these. I mean, remember when Facebook shut down for hours and hours and they couldn't actually get into the server room because it was hyper connected. Their pass system was linked into the actual server infrastructure that went down. And I mean, they actually had to use axes to break down the door, it is said, to get into the room where they could fix the things that brought down Facebook. I mean, we're actually doing this type of thing in this century. We're seeing a lot of situations with devices coming to the market that have Internet of Things connectivity built into them. And, you know, it's laudable. We're trying to change our products. We're trying to do the right things. We're trying to invent a new and different future. But, I mean, we're seeing reports of people that can't use their oven because it can't get a connection and can't do an upgrade and things are going wrong. We're seeing situations where, you know, Amazon is relying on our architecture in which the images are stored in buckets somewhere, and we get a credentials service error that happens, and so as a result, all of their smart machines are showing errors on their images. We're seeing situations in which, you know, my apartment has an app to use a washing machine, and now my washing machine is sending me marketing emails, and you know, this is happening where the marketing department gets involved in our digital infrastructure and views it as an opportunity to do some marketing to the customer and does nothing more than absolutely infuriate them. This is a great one. A flaw in smart feeders could let hackers overfeed your cat. I mean, all the technology that we're putting out there, we're not doing a great job on security. And then there's the whole privacy grab, where organizations are thinking that, hey, we can grab a whole bunch of information about our customers with or without their consent and use that for a bunch of laudable or perhaps nefarious purposes. So your car may actually be recording way more information than you actually know. And then we see like, absolutely crazy stuff where Amazon, for example, has created a $55 soap dispenser that has Wi-Fi to pair to your Alexa speaker. Like, why? Do we really need this stuff? So I think the challenge is we're building the future and we're not really thinking it through. We're not really doing a good job. And the implications are profound. I mean, if we're going into a world of 24-hour farming with a lot of connected technology and autonomous vehicles and virtualization software, we can't mess things up. If we are building a world of interconnected energy grids and microgrids, where we're linking together our solar infrastructure and our wind infrastructure and our energy infrastructure into our home energy system and thermostats, we've got to do a better job at pulling it together. If we are building a world of healthcare in which we're going to diagnose you before you're sick with a lot of advanced hyper-connected medical device technology, we have to do a better job at it because patients' lives are in essence at risk. If we are going to architect a future world of insurance in which we're aligning to the acceleration of consumer expectations, and somebody expects to be able to go into an automotive lot and buy a car and get a loan approval in 45 seconds and do the same thing with their automotive insurance, we've got to make sure that the infrastructure works or we lose critical business. If we are going to build manufacturing facilities utilizing the industrial Internet of Things and 3D printing and cobotics and robotics and a lot of sophisticated interconnected machines, we've got to make sure it's reliable, robust, scalable. If we're building a world of retail that is really doing everything right in terms of pick and pack and logistics and last mile delivery, we got to do it right. We've got to do a better job. If we are going to architect self-driving autonomous vehicles, we can't put in place an infrastructure that somebody is going to be able to bring down because we left a bucket open somewhere. So my whole issue is that I think we need to do better in terms of the infrastructure that we are putting together. And some years ago, I put together a post, I called it the 11 Rules of IoT Architecture. Now this could apply to anything we are doing on our digital transformation voyage, but let's go through the list of I think what we really need to be thinking about as we go forward into the future. Any device that we bring out there, for example, should be upgradable. Any device should have the ability to be upgraded from afar automatically, either by user choice or centralized management. This demands that we have a reliable, scalable, robust architecture that can deal with the reality of millions of interconnected devices and do an automatic upgrade that is simply going to work. It's not going to fail because, we don't want to be the person who's going to bring down farms across North America because we had some type of upgrade issue with our smart, intelligent farming devices. Any device should be feature edition capable. We should be able, in the design of the device, to have the ability to add some capabilities, some of which might not even be imagined at the time of development of the product. Any product we develop today, we should have a mindset that we can add features to it in the future. Any device that we bring out there should be prognostic, diagnostic. We should have the ability where the device itself can self-diagnose problems and report when it is working not correctly, or we should have the ability to poll a series of devices to determine where there are potential operating flaws, because this is what it really means to have a hyper-connected, intelligent, connected future. Any device that we bring out there should be self-repairing. The device should not only know when things are going wrong, but should have the capability to fix itself once it's aware of a problem. If devices are becoming technology, hyper-connected software platforms, we've got to have the ability for those devices to a degree to fix themselves. Devices should be programmable. The device should be modifiable by users. So the whole concept of APIs to add functionality or to add capabilities or draw insight from the device. The device should be modifiable by users to the extent it is possible within a robust, reliable security and privacy architecture. This is absolutely critical. A device should be self-reporting. The device should be able to report on a wide variety of information pertaining to operations, proximity, location, status, because if we're going to deploy this smart future, we've got to have the ability to analyze how well it is working. And I think what this leads to is devices that are swarm data gathering. The device should be able to generate information that, in concert with other similar devices, is able to be manipulated to provide some unique operational, predictive, or maintenance information data set. I talk about this, for example, within the utility sector, that if we're going to have microgrid technology where I've got renewable, you've got solar, we've got a little neighborhood grid that is connected to the larger utility grid, we need this type of swarm data gathering capability to ensure the machine we are building is reliable. The device should be intelligence aware. It should, on launch or in the future, have or be provided capabilities to make its own decisions based upon input data. I mean, this is architecting, thinking through the architect of the device for existing or future artificial intelligence concepts. It should be sensor aware, because any device is not just a standalone device, but it should be able to link to one or more external sensors for additional information in order to extend its functionality. And by virtue of that, it should be grid connectable. It should exist or participate in some sort of connected series of devices to achieve some original or newly conceived purpose. To do that, all of these devices should be individually and collectively addressable. An IP4 address, an IP6 address, and we've got to think through what we're doing in terms of deployment and management of these devices. So it should be accessible either on its own or as part of many predefined groups. And last but not least, it should be secure and inaccessible to it should be secure and inaccessible except to trusted authorities. The device has to be able to do this within a reliable, robust security architecture. Are we doing this? Not at all. And I think that's why we're seeing all these unique challenges that are occurring out there as we build what is becoming a very rocky road and path to the future. There's a phrase I would often use on stage, Ogden Nash, progress is great, but it's gone on way too long. And I think what happens when we don't do it right is people get frustrated. Senior executives begin to question where we're going with our plans. They begin to question what we are doing with our technology and our path forward. But here's the thing. I've discovered in a lot of organizations, the challenge is at the top. I don't see a lot of boards of directors out there in which information technology and IoT architecture and security and privacy and scalability, all these things are a board level responsibility. I mean, a board of directors, we've got responsibility for executive compensation and legal and audit and things like that. How many boards out there have individuals who are responsible for digital transformation? And I've been talking about this for years. How many boards are really paying attention? Some years back, I think it was 15, 20 years ago, I wrote an article, The Next Governance Grenade. What is going to go wrong in organizations? Well, I think I was bang on, because I wrote, if you don't move the issue of corporate infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and network security into the boardroom fast, you may soon find yourself at the receiving end of some pretty nasty regulatory, not to mention legal consequences. And that's what's happening so far in our voyage to the future. We're not doing a good job at it. But to me, when it comes to the future, every challenge is an opportunity. What do you need to do? Let's cover the list of 10 things that I think you need to do right now to accelerate the foundation that you have in place as we go down this path of digital transformation in the era of acceleration, where everything became faster as a result of the global pandemic. So what's your action plan for going forward? Well, look, 30 years of stage experience tells me that people like to have a list of things to do. So I would often close with my 10 great words. And I'm going to give you a list of not 10 great words, but 10 things that you should think about to accelerate your capabilities. I think number one, get a seat at the table. Digital transformation is real. It's important. Go back to my point about the fact that most board of directors do not have somebody on the board with responsibility for the most critical, disruptive issue of our time. You need to have a seat at the table. You need to be there at a strategic senior leadership level. I think number two, you have to educate everybody in your organization, all of your senior leadership team, as to just how critical this is and why it's important that we do this right, because the future of your organization truly depends on how good a job you do at this. I think number 3, you have to reimagine your future. Go back to my point that we are in a situation in which companies that do not yet exist will build products not yet conceived, using materials not yet invented, with methodologies not yet in existence, and reimagine how you could actually make that part of your pathway for the future. I think number 4, elevate the discussion, elevate the importance of this. Make sure that everybody throughout the organization understands the criticality of the mission in front of you. I think number 5, you need to architect. Go to my 11 rules of IoT architecture. That could be any type of digital transformation architecture. Use that as a starting point to consider how you need to architect yourself for a robust, reliable, scalable, secure infrastructure for your future. Number 6, invest. You can't do this for pennies. You have to invest significant sums of money. If this defines the future of your organization, it needs to have a budget which emphasizes and supports just how important this is. Number 7, you have to staff and partner up. This involves new skills and new capabilities, the proper resources, the proper people with the right skills, the right knowledge at the right time for the right purpose. They might be someone internal. You might build up your own internal resources, or you might need to find external partners to help you do what needs to be done. Number 8, revisit your plans on a regular basis. We live in the era of the acceleration gap. Everything is changing, and it's changing extremely fast. So no plans are set in stone. Number 9, you have to accelerate everything you do. The future belongs to those who are fast. It now belongs to those who are faster. And you have to get moving now, because the future is coming at us with greater intensity, greater speed. We live in the era of acceleration. If you do these 10 things, you get to the 11th most important word of all, and that's enjoy. Thank you for joining me on our voyage here today. I'm going to close with one observation. There's 3 types of people. There's those who watch the future happen. There's those who make the future happen. And there's those who sit back and go, whoa, I didn't see that happening. I didn't see that coming. You need to be the second type of person. Thank you for joining me today in my virtual broadcast studio. Everything worked, the technology rocked. We live in the era of absolute transformation. Futurist Jim Carroll. Thank you for watching.